Hey everyone, welcome back to the Quacking Pancakes YouTube channel. I'm Evan. So I thought it would be a fun idea to start a new series on this channel where I talk about the books that I read during the year and separate it into months. So for this video, it's going to be all of the books that I read in the month of January of 2022. My New Year's resolution for 2022 was to read more, and the way I worded it, so I would make sure that I would accomplish it, is I just said read more. And when you don't read at all in 2021, it's not really hard to read more. So let's just jump into it. So the first book that I read this year was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Quick disclaimer, this is the first time that I'm reading this series. So first time I'm reading the fourth book. When I read the fifth book, it'll be the first time. I started with this one for 2022 just because I read the other ones last year. So it's not like I'm just starting with the fourth one. I can't say enough good things about these books. I feel like a part of my childhood is like being restored by reading these books. I felt like they've been sitting on my shelf for years and I just have never read them. And I don't know why. Reading them now, it's just so good and so entertaining. And because I watched the movies as a kid and I'm just now reading the books, I've kind of realized that in a way I'm glad that I did it this way. Because I know a lot of people, they say, oh, the book is way better than the movie. And I feel like if I read the books before watching the movies, I would have been disappointed by the movies. Maybe not disappointed, but just like, oh, this isn't how the book was, exactly word for word. And what I've noticed is that after watching the movies and then reading the books, it's kind of like an unabridged version of the movie, because I have the idea of what Harry, Ron, Hermione look like in my head, and I'm using those references. I'm using Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and Emma Watson as the references to what they look like. You know, I can't help it because I watched the movies first. And I have this idea of what Hogwarts looks like in the movies. So I'm using those images to kind of create the pictures for the books, which is cool for me because it's like, you know, that unabridged version of, oh, it's all these deleted scenes from the movie that I'm now getting in book form. And it's really cool. It's great. You know, it's 700 pages of just pure greatness, cover to cover. I mean, there's really not much else to say about it. If you've read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there are parts of the book where I understand why they cut it out of the movie. There was a whole scene in the book, or I guess it's like a little subplot where Hermione is fighting for the justice of the elves. She thinks that they're being mistreated, and the elves are like, no, we're cool, man. We're vibing to Dumbledore's got us with the hookup, you know, and Hermione just can't wrap her head around it. And I mean, it's fine. It's a good subplot in the book, but at the same time, I get why they cut it out of the movie. It's really like, it doesn't really add much to the story. But otherwise, I was really surprised at how much they kept in the book. There was one scene that I was disappointed with in the book that I enjoyed in the movie a little bit more. And I know people have talked about how they don't like this scene in the movie because it's so different from the book. And that was the dragon scene from the first event of the Triwizard Tournament. And I just thought it was a little boring in the book compared to the movie. The book is just like, oh, Harry distracts the dragon and he gets the egg. All right, congratulations, on to the next event. But in the movie, it's kind of more drawn out and a little more actiony, which, you know, if you read the book first, you're like, oh, this is nothing like the book in the movie. Overall, love the book. Can't wait to read the next one. I think the next one is even longer than this one. So, it's gonna be a time. So I would rate this a 4.2 Potter Stinks badges out of 5. All right, cruising on to something that was a little bit of a higher reading level. Wanted to really sink my teeth into something that would make me think a little bit, and that was the Song of Achilles. And let me just preface by saying I didn't know anything about this book going into it. This was like the first book that I knew that I wanted to read, that I didn't know of beforehand. The way I found it was I went on TikTok and pretty much just looked up the hashtag book talk, and everybody was talking about this book. And I kind of just assumed that it was a newer book, came out in the last couple of years, but apparently this book is older than most fifth graders. At least I hope. But in all seriousness, this was a really good book. Like I said, I didn't know what I was really getting myself into. I didn't know much about it beforehand, and I have to say that I just absolutely loved Madeline Miller's writing. It was spectacular, and I know a lot more about Greek mythology than I did before I read this book. So much so that I didn't know that this was based on like actual Greek mythology. I kind of just assumed that they were using the names and that it was just kind of a fictional story. But after doing a little research, I realized that this is based on events that presumably happened, and it just got me like super interested in more of, you know, this time period and the Greek mythology. And now I feel like I really need to watch 300, which Kory has been wanting me to watch for a long time, so I think I owe him this now. Something that I really enjoyed about this book was that I really haven't felt more emotion from characters in a book. Like the two main characters in the book, I don't really know how many spoilers I want to give in this series, because I still haven't figured out if I want to tell you, oh, everything about this book and what I think about this book, or if it's just, hey, these are the books I read, maybe you read them too. But the main characters in this book, they're just parts in the book, they're just so devoted to, you know, something that's happening in the book, and it's incredible. The writing is beautiful, for lack of a better term. It really just, you know, this book is, I would say, I don't know what, 10 months, and it's 700 pages. This is like, what, 20 years? I think like 9 years happens in one page. And just so much happens, like so much, there's so much emotion, there's so much detail, and it's so vibrant, and everything is just great. I wouldn't consider this a romance novel by any means. Of course, the two main characters in the story do end up falling in love. The internal conflict of pride and glory versus love is kind of crazy. It's frustrating in a way. Like, there were times when I was very frustrated by this book, and I was like, oh, why are they doing this the way that they are? But, you know, in the end, I was very pleased with the ending. It's sad. I mean, if you know anything about Greek mythology, you should know how it ends, but definitely worth a read. Very good, very, very powerful, and I would love to read more by the author. I think the only thing was that at certain times the names and the places got a little overwhelming, just because I don't know, like I didn't know anything about anybody. There is a glossary in the back which helps so much. There's names with faces, you know, character sheet and all that, which really helps with that. And at the end of the day, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, you still have an idea of what's going on. The best way I can associate it for me was that it kind of felt like playing a video game, where when I read it, I got the idea, like the main idea. I'm playing the main story of the game, but there are certain side quests that I don't do in the game, and it's kind of like in the book where, you know, some things aren't really clear 100% of the time. It's like I'm not doing all the side quests, but I still get the idea, the main idea of the story. I had to go back and like reread a couple things. I like went back to certain pages and I was like, oh right, okay, that's why it is the way it is. Overall, I would give this a 4.5 Achilles heels out of 5. It's so funny how different these two books are. So the last book that I read in the month of January of 2022 was John Daly's Golf My Own Damn Way. And wow, what a ride this was. So whether it's for his bleach blonde mullet, his crazy pants collection, or his colorful personal life, John Daly was probably one of the most unique golfers to ever pass the PGA Tour. This book was given to me by a friend. He said it was a really quick and easy read, and he wasn't lying. It was really good though. I enjoyed a lot of it. There were a lot of really helpful tips on how to lower your score in golf, which my friend and I, Craig, both really enjoy golfing. And there were actually some really helpful tips that I found to be useful. I don't know, I haven't golfed since finishing this book, so hopefully the next time I go out, we'll see. it was just mostly ways to envision, the way that you play, just different perspectives. And it was still a jokey kind of humorous book. There were a lot of parts where he's like, oh, why can't people on the PGA Tour just wear shorts all the time? I don't know. That's how I kind of thought the whole book would be, but there are actually a lot of parts that I found to be pretty serious. He takes the game really seriously, even if it may not seem like he does. Something that I found interesting in the book is the first chapter. He talks about what you should do before you start a round of golf, the motions you should go through, the warm-ups, the kind of mental game you have to play at the range. And then like halfway through the book, there's a different chapter where he's like, I don't do any of that. No, I just take a couple practice swings and then I go out and play the game. So it's just kind of funny. Just hearing his thoughts on golf and how he thinks that an average player, this isn't written as like, I'm a better golfer than you and do all these things that I do and you'll be a better golfer. It's not like that. It's really just, hey, I know who I'm writing to. These are the things that you probably are not doing very well that you could be doing better, and I'm going to tell you how to do them. If you're into golf at all, I would definitely recommend this book. If you like John Daly, definitely read the book. I wouldn't say you have to read the whole thing. It's like a coffee table book. You pick the book up if you're bored, you find a chapter that sounds interesting, and you go from there. Overall, I would rate this 4 American flag pants out of 5. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. So there's one more thing that I like to bring up, and that is starting now, I'm going to bring up a book that I'm going to be reading for the next month. So this is January's episode. I'm going to show you a book that I will be reading for February's episode. And what that'll kind of do is, maybe if you want to read it as well, kind of talk about it in the comments for the next video. Maybe in the future we can start a Quacking Pancakes Discord, Kory and I can, and one of the channels will be like, oh, the Quacking Pancakes Book Club or something. But it's just one book in particular that, if we start getting more people watching the video and they want to kind of follow along, do some discussion on it, that's great. It's going to be awesome. So for the month of February, I will be reading Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. It was a book I read in middle school. But I don't think I really appreciated it as much. So I'll be reading this one and be talking about it a little more in detail as opposed to the other books that I talk about next month. So this is going to be the kind of featured book of next month. So if you guys want to read it, awesome. We can talk about it in the next video. But I will see you guys later, and I hope to see you in the next one.